Shalom. Just wanted to get some Buna. Buna is the Ethiopian way of saying coffee, since coffee was discovered, recovered, but coffee comes from Ethiopia, Kefa. Anyway, this was probably one of the first videos for 2012, and this is the first day of January 1st, 2011. So we say Shalom, Rastafari, and to our Ethiopian Hebrew peoples at home and abroad, in the name of the King of Kings and His Christ, Getachina med Hanatachini Jesus Christos. Amen. Have you felt this pagan holiday drain, emotional, psychical drain? In other words, this now marks, being the new year, it actually marks what they call the end of the Gentile Folly Day holiday season, which really began, we can say, roughly around the Christ Mass, or so-called the Gentile white pagan Christmas season, and has continued to now. But actually, when does it really begin? See, we're in a little ereft. It means rest time right now, from the white Western pagan Gentile American Folly Day, Holy Day season. Now that this is the first of the year, a lot of folks are going to feel the drain, economically, financial drain, emotional drain. And most of all, though some are so spiritually dead that they don't feel it anymore, the spiritual drain. Many of us who do not observe these white Western Gentile pagan holidays or holy days, although sometimes we may have to bow to so-called the pressure. We don't want to admit it, but sometimes one has family and friends and in-laws and others, and although they know that this is not the right holy days, they still suffer. They suffer these things, and many of y'all might have had to suffer these things in this particular season. But what we want to speak on at the outset is how the being and beings that they call the devil and Satan seeks to control your life through their false and misinterpreted holy days or holidays, or what we as Rastafari would call folly days. And this is what this particular reasoning, this beginning of the year lecture and reasoning is going to be on. Now, those who have been following the videos and checking out our videos on the YouTubes and at www.lojsociety.org, no doubt have seen some of the recent time videos on, quote, time, what time is, and how time can be changed or perceived or distorted in the rate of atmosphere. For example, now if you feel it, it's a little different feeling than a week ago, than a couple of weeks ago. Now that the so-called holidays, the New Year's, all of that has gone through, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of anxiety. A little point. Have you noticed that the Jewish so-called holidays always seem to go before the so-called Gentile holidays? Have you noticed that? Even though Jesus, Yeshua, Jesus Christos, Getachin, even though he was a Yehuda or a Jew, even though he was a Jew, and Christianity teaches us that Christ, the true Christ, the real Christ, not this whitewashed Anglo-European Gentile Christ, but the real Christ of the Bible, of the Word of Truth, that he fulfilled all of the Hebrew and Torah types. And so he's a fulfillment of Torah, even to the holy days. And this is an aspect of the mystery of God in Christ and the teachings of His Imperial Majesty that we hope to touch on. Because for us, as Ethiopian Hebrews, the end of the pagan white Western Gentile holidays or folly days actually is a kind of a beginning of certain holy days for us as Ethiopians and as Hebrews or as black Jews. For example, January 7th is what we call Lidet, or the Lideta Iesus, often known as the Lideta Iesus Christos, or the birthday of Yeshua, whom the world calls Jesus Christ, Adonenu Yehoshua HaMoshiach, his more proper Ibraist sim, his Hebrew name. That the birthday of Christ from the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition and the Oriental and the Eastern churches, the Eastern Christianity, you're going to hear a little bit of talk in the news and the media of, oh, this is the Greek and this is the Orthodox Christmas time, and Greek and Orthodox Christians are celebrating the birth of Christ according to their calculation. And, they give you a little something, and that's it. The interesting thing is this, is that Christ, Yehoshua, the real Christ, originates from the East. His star was seen by the Magi or the Magi in the East, by the ancient astrologers and astronomers in the East. And that light comes from the East and it shines to the West. But where does it have its origination? Obviously, it has its origination in the East. So tell me, how come the Ethiopian Christmas, the Eastern Orthodox churches, their celebration of the birth of Christ actually is positioned after or later than the Gentiles? Or rather, why do the Gentiles rush ahead and have their so-called Christ Mass? Really, they should call it Christ Winter Solstice. It's the Christ Winter Solstice. Now, if you know anything about the calendar, the Western, white, European, Gregorian, so forth and so on, these calendar that we use here in the West, so that is imposed upon us in the West. One thing that will become very, very clear, it's man-made. Some idiots who thought the earth was flat, some European idiots who thought the earth was flat until they could decipher more of the ancient Ethiopian, Egyptian, black, Hebrew, the ancient teachings of black people, and recognize, well, the earth really is not flat. Really, there are 365 days, and this is the ancient Egyptian calendar, and this is the ancient calendar from the ancient world, so forth and so on. They discovered these things, and recently they discovered the doggone people, you understand, whom they thought were liars too, because they were black and they were revealing to them things that they didn't know. And then they got better technology, they got better toys, better computers and better telescopes and better lenses, and then they were able to see what this so-called primitive people, the Dogon people, allegedly saw with their own eyes. Now, whether they saw this or not, whether their eyes are strong enough to see it or not, is in the whole other debate. What they did see has now been justified and vindicated by so-called white supremacy. So you hear a lot of talk about the Dogon people, so forth and so on. But even in this whole talk of 2012 and a new age, the half of the story, the Ethiopian Hebrew half of the story, is not being told. So that's just a little bit that's been on our minds recently, and this is our first probably video that we've gone on camera or in camera, you understand, to film, so forth and so on, because personally speaking, we just wanted to just withdraw from a lot of this madness. And every time it's all in the atmosphere, the holy day, folly day season, go out and buy gifts and give gifts. And it's about greed more than the real reason for the season. It's about Santa Claus and reindeer and Christmas tree and all this nonsense that they know. This is the good part. They know it's not biblical. They know it's not of Christ. And yet, knowing what they know, they continue to do what they do. So, 2012 Happy 2012. This is what we want to say. Happy 2012. And all the best of the fulfillment of prophecy to you all. But let us now go into another lecture right here. And this lecture is going to be on how the devil, Satan, seeks to control your lives, and I would say our lives, but now we've become wise to this. Now we have a decision. Once you know, then you have a decision. You must decide what you are going to do. So stay tuned, brothers and sisters. This is Wendem Iadonis saying in this so-called 2012, Shalom, Rastafari, and to my Ethiopian, Hebrew, Black, Jewish brothers and others in Christ at home and abroad. Shalom.